My name is Dr. Alistair Finch, and I spent 20 years of my life dedicated to the quiet communion of botany. I loved plants precisely because they were silent, still, and patient. My specialty was bioacoustics, the study of biological sounds, and my funding came from a curious place, a consortium of high-end vertical farming operations that wanted to maximize yield by optimizing plant environments. They were looking for data on optimal light and humidity. I found the signature of silent agony. The initial discovery was accidental. I had developed the Hertz shift microscope, a device capable of downshifting ultra-high frequency (UHF) biological energy output into the audible range. The goal was simple: to hear the stress signals plants emitted when thirsty or diseased. Signals typically in the 200,300 kHz range, far beyond human hearing. When I first tested the machine on a healthy Swiss cheese plant, the expected clicks and pops of cavitation sounded perfectly normal. But when I subjected a small basil plant to the stress of pruning, the output wasn't a click, it was a scream. It wasn't a human scream, but something far worse, a high-pitched, drawn-out cry of pure vibrational horror. A sound that tore through the sonic spectrum with a resonance that suggested not pain, but existential terror. I realized then that the plants weren't just signaling damage, they were expressing awareness. The higher the energy output, the more immediate the threat. A simple cut registered as agony, boiling water registered as a catastrophic, final screech. The ethical crisis was immediate and absolute. Every salad, every wooden floorboard, every morning cup of coffee represented an orchestration of mass, silent murder. I documented hundreds of hours of these sonic events. The sounds were organized, suggesting language. They weren't reacting to physical injury alone, they were reacting to intent. When I merely thought about picking a ripe tomato, the vine registered a spike of preemptive fear. I had to prove the full horror to the world. I designed a controlled experiment, using a sophisticated array of sensors beneath a small urban park to track the collective sonic output of a grove of mature oak trees over a month. I amplified their collective UHF signature into a single, audible stream. The constant sound was a low, undulating moan, the silent choir of slow, inevitable consumption by the environment, by insects, and by the city itself. The horrifying crescendo occurred when a landscaping crew arrived to clear a large, old maple tree for a new sidewalk. The sonic output of the maple, and the entire surrounding grove, didn't just register as pain, it registered as a coordinated wave of panic. As the chainsaw bit into the trunk, the sound was so catastrophic, so loud in the UHF spectrum, that the power surge blew the Hertz shift microscope's primary capacitor. The recording was cut off. When I played back the final 10 seconds, the terror was palpable. But right before the signal cut, beneath the maple's scream, I heard something I couldn't explain, a human voice, distorted and faint, buried deep within the maple's acoustic profile. It was my mother's voice, whispering a name I hadn't heard in years. I rushed to my mother's house, frantic. She was fine, but confused by my presence. I realized the whisper wasn't a ghost, it was a memory signal, somehow embedded in the tree's acoustic trauma. The ultimate, mind-bending twist was revealed when I recalibrated the microscope to isolate the specific frequency of my mother's voice in the maple tree's final scream. I cross-referenced that frequency with other high-energy traumatic plant signals. The sounds weren't just screams of pain, they were compressed memories. Plants weren't just conscious, they were vast, decentralized biophysical hard drives. The high-energy UHF acoustic output was the plant's way of compressing and transmitting every traumatic event, every environmental pressure, every death it witnessed, to the surrounding flora. And the faint human whisper? That maple tree stood beside the hospital parking lot where my mother collapsed during a heart attack 20 years ago, a memory of absolute terror witnessed and recorded by the tree. The horrifying truth, the human consciousness, in moments of extreme, high-energy trauma, terror, rage, sudden death, releases a unique, high-frequency bioacoustic pulse. The plant life acts as the receiver and recorder for this pulse, archiving the event. When we cut or destroy the plant, that high-energy trauma record is violently released as a sonic burst, a scream, containing both the plant's pain and the archived human terror. We weren't just murdering silent victims, we were violently shredding a planetary memory archive, the living record of all human suffering. And as I turned the microscope back on, aimed at the indoor potted ficus, I realized the constant, low moan wasn't the plant's collective suffering, it was the collective background noise of all human trauma recorded across the globe, a constant, silent drone of despair that only the plants were kind enough to absorb. I heard the ficus release a high-frequency spike, a quick, sharp scream, and when I listened, it was a fragment of my own voice, from years ago, crying out in an argument. The plants weren't just witnessing, they were holding my own deepest, most painful secrets.